One of the legendary artists in New Mexico is Betty Sabo. And with us today is filmmaker, producer, and creator of a film that is going to debut here on UABQ TV beginning of 2014. Steve Palmisano, who's a native Albuquerquean and with us today, creator of the film Betty Sabo and Artful Life. Good to meet you, Steve.
Nice to meet you.
And with us today is also Fred Matteucci. Fred is Betty's longtime friend and companion, and knows her better than probably better than she knows herself. Fred, good to see you.
Good to see
known
you, Larry,
many years.
Aaron.
Good to
Glad
see
to be
you.
here.
Thanks for coming along.
Thank you for having us.
What a pleasure. And I brought our Betty Sabo painting from home that hangs in our home. We're just so proud of it. I look at it all the time. Her work is so wonderful.
That is different than what I've seen. And
is that right? That one?
This is just awesome.
My wife's actually owned that about 20, 25 years. So.
Yeah, that's beautiful. The pink in there, and
we'll show it on camera here in a minute.
And
there's
trees and
that's an example of her work. If you've not heard of Betty before, you're about to learn a lot about a terrific lady and a terrific artist. Gosh, where do we start? Her career goes how far back, Fred?
Well, she graduated from high school in '46, and then she went to UNM. Took her into the '50s, and then she had 5 children. And then art was her love. From Principal Ream at Albuquerque High School was really involved into the art and directed her, and she just loved the art. And she went on to UNM and studied art there, and then she happened to have. From that point on, with the 5 kids, she still painted, and she really had some really great paintings, and went from there.
Right. So, Fred, how did you get to meet Betty? How did you guys come into?
Well, of all people, his dad. I didn't even know Steve at that time. In 2003, in fact, the month was June. That I got a call from his dad, a stockbroker, and I says, well, he's going to sell me some penny stocks. Instead, he was calling me about Betty Sabo, that she was friends. She had just lost her husband 2 years prior to that to a stroke, and she was being taken to different events in the city. And Betty, I'm fumbling a little bit.
That's okay.
She's got me really excited about her life, and but anyway, I had the opportunity to meet Betty, and through the Frontier people, Dorothy and Larry Ronichek, and then us sharing our life together, what we did in the '40s in Albuquerque and in the '50s, and we just evolved and had a lot of like things together, and we went from there.
Now, Steve, you had the challenge of not only telling the story of a person and her life, but to portray her art and her struggles and her successes and everything else.
Yeah, she did so much. It was hard to, we started out thinking we'd just do half an hour, little documentary, and went to about an hour, but we still couldn't include everything she did. She was so involved in the community. She started out as an oil painter. She learned from a really great artist by the name of Carl Van Hostler. She went to Albuquerque High, got together with the principal there who started collecting art. So that just fed into her art background and her desires. And then in the when she was in the 60s, her age, she started sculpting. And so between all that time, she was real involved with the city, the county, any organization, any charitable organization she gave her art to, and that was all Betty. She gave everything away. She wanted to do for everybody. She just wanted to bring art and make Albuquerque an art center. So. Yeah.
And one of the probably most notable things that I've seen of her work is her sculptures at UNM. The people, I see so many pictures of the students or just visitors always taking pictures with that.
Just people.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I actually learned of Betty in college because she's a Chi Omega. She was a Chi Omega. You're always a Chi O. So that's where I met her. So we're sisters.
Sure, yeah.
The funny thing about it, you're talking about the sculptures at UNM.
Yeah.
Well, at that time she was doing those sculptures, she had about 15 more sculptures she was working on for the art museum on Oñate. And it was just wonderful that she had that many projects going on at one time. I couldn't believe working on that, plus doing all this volunteering type of thing, being on the board of directors of this and that, and Casa Angelica and
And she was
museum
very
and the
involved
foundation.
as well,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
Now, the story is a very interesting one, because if it wasn't for Betty Sabo, Albuquerque probably wouldn't have the public art program that it does today.
Yeah,
she really drove that, along with some other community supporters.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the things early on. A lot of the things that are happening now, Betty was involved with at the beginning. The 1% for Art program, Betty was a big driver of that with the city. The arts and crafts fair that is usually at the state fair, she was a big driver of that. The miniature show at the museum, she was co-founded that. So any large art organization that is happening now, Betty had something to do with early on. This picture here was probably her greatest accomplishment, in that, being a Albuquerque High graduate, she knew the artwork that they had. The principal at the time knew a lot of the big artists from Taos, the Taos artists.
It's amazing that this beautiful art was hanging in the hallways of a high school.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Vacant then later on.
Yeah.
They were on the floor in places. They were in storage rooms. They just weren't being cared for, and that's when Betty came in and said, "Look, we got to do something with this. This art collection, as it was a collection, was invaluable," and she knew that, and fought really hard to get that to the museum.
For our director, there's two images. There's one of an Indian girl next to a horse, and there's another one of that one. This is a very famous painting that was hanging at Albuquerque High, and she managed to save it, right?
Right.
And
that was part of the collection. Yeah.
Those paintings are probably worth over $1 million now.
Right.
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
these are Burning House. Is that right?
Burning House and Bloom and Shine.
Yeah, and they're incredibly valuable paintings, and hard to believe that they were just in this vacant high school and she saved them.
I think we have a clip of the documentary that talks about those two paintings itself.
Okay,
I'm not
well,
sure
we
if
can
we're
run
ready.
that. We have a little video clip from Betty Sabo, An Artful Life.
This was probably the most popular painting for years, anywhere. It's so dear, the expression on his face. He's trying to sell his chicken, and it's just got a lot of emotion in it for the chicken. So but we all loved it, still do, and I'm so glad it's here. It's great. This is one of New Mexico's most famous and respected artists. It's Burning House, and highly regarded today in museums and everywhere. We were very fortunate to have this painting. Heaven knows what it's worth now. I can't imagine. But if you study it, it's beautiful, the color and everything.
She was tireless. She knew just where to go, who to see, whom to see, and whom to persuade, and it was a mission for her.
The Albuquerque Museum today looks pretty grand. So it's a big evolution. And Albuquerque's very lucky those pictures stayed here. At that early stage when I was dealing, we were just trying to put those great pictures in great collections wherever they were.
We're lucky in this museum to have these paintings because they were old when I was young. And that was a long time ago.
Great work. Now, Betty was famous for her depiction of snow, and we're going to put up an image of one of her paintings. This is a winter scene, and she painted a lot of these.
The snow, a lot of people used to come up to me and say, that's the most beautiful snow that I ever seen. And she used a blue mixed in with her white to bring this out. And I said, blue? What are you doing with blue in the snow? But it doesn't look like blue in there.
Yeah.
But it was very unusual what she did. And
the documentary is called Betty Sabo, An Artful Life. It premieres on UABQ here next February. It's had one public showing so far, but we're going to give it a little more airtime.
I think it's going to run every Thursday, I think.
Wonderful.
Yeah, Thursday evenings.
My wife and I watched it last night, and we were just riveted, and saw so many old friends in there too.
Yeah. It was neat to go back and interview a lot of people. Charlie Pride, who had a big golf tournament here, he's in it. Mayor Chavez. You saw Gerald Peters.
Fred, please give our best to Betty, will you?
I sure will.
Well, it's great to see you again.
Good
And
to
Steve,
see
a
you
great
all.
piece of work.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you for being
Appreciate
on
it.
the morning.